I began first by putting a context, how to define the subject in which we'll be tackling. Each person had their own unique perspective on how they define government. What is the background and experiences of these speakers, as well as me, the artist? My name is Paul, though I've been considering changing my first name for some time. I'm an artist and filmmaker. I'm trans non-binary and Latinx. And like many of the speakers, I've spent extensive time thinking about or working in government. My experiences, mostly local government, nonprofit, and educational institutions, I found myself again and again involved in some form of government organization. How and why did others get involved?
I think when I was actually really young, so 18, getting involved in my local community, we were running a bicycle co-op, and there was a lot we wanted, and as cyclists who were a big presence in my hometown in North Florida, that we wanted the city to do, and we started realizing there were these formal processes. There was a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee meeting. So we started going to those meetings and realizing the folks sitting there didn't really represent the needs or the folks who were riding bicycles. I'd go on a Tuesday night and I'd be the only person there, and they would react and sometimes take action based on my comments and being like, wow, this is so easy. It's so hard to find out about it, but like, it's so accessible.
I fell into it. Never really thought that it would be a possibility for me to end up in working in government. It was through a set of really unusual circumstances, including a fellowship, gave me the opportunity to test the waters. I became inspired about what governments can do, especially at the local level. Decided to stay after the fellowship, worked there for 3.5 more years after as an employee.
I kind of come from a lineage of people who've worked in government. Post college, worked for a few nonprofits and just got the nonprofit burnout.
So I grew up in East LA in a little fourplex apartment next to the 60 and 710 freeways. My mom, being an immigrant from Mexico, would bring me back to Guadalajara. It was a community outside on like the outskirts of the city that was being developed very slowly and by hand. So the streets weren't paved. You would occasionally see a horse. I just thought, being exposed to all of that compared to where I grew up, I just saw kind of where my mom had come from and how she was realizing her dreams. And I realized also that, in order to achieve your dreams and make a better life for yourself, for your family, that's just something that everybody wants. And the manifestation of dreams often is the built environment. It's like housing and it's planning and it's the world, right?
My parents are from the Jim Crow South, and we're part of that migration west. And they strongly believe that the same government that meted out apartheid in the South would be fair as an employer in the West. Both of my parents were lifelong public servants. So at 18, I had just graduated high school. My mother pushed me to apply for a job with General Services Division, and I did, and I was a city hall operator.
I came to UCLA and got involved in student government and in these sort of student activist circles, thinking about educational access as a social justice issue, and got involved in organizing around affirmative action and for immigrant rights. And I think in that process, it really opened my eyes to just how policy decisions are made in a non-objective way. I think I really saw how necessary it was to organize outside of the system, but also how necessary it was to find ways to advocate for the sort of codification of those things in law or policy and budgetary priority.
As I've asked the speakers, why did I get involved? In middle school and high school, I started by spending my lunches in meetings for student government, and throughout my 20s and 30s, always finding myself involved. I've always tried to understand how these systems operate and how I can be involved in them. This desire to be involved in some way, trying to educate myself, feeling the same joys and frustrations of others with these systems, and never giving up on their importance.